never made it, but I know what it takes. I'm motivated by a mix of emotion. Got my statement, and I'm reading it slow so I can understand it fully. Appreciate my standing, go out of this world and right on time. Oh, never in my life have I seen the sky light up like this. I'm far away from Earth and I wanna know if you exist. Mission control, do you read me? Send me my coordinates lately. Mission control, am I drifting? Tie me to someone who will love me, yeah. Wait, I think I'll last a bit longer. Fine.
Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd Family a part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. Happy Monday to everybody out there, and we are kicking off the final full week in the month of November, because in the middle of next week the calendar turns over to December. This is the time of the year where we all sit back and get fat because we have all the Thanksgiving feast, and then of course shortly after that, about the time you recover, we have Christmas get-togethers and Christmas feast, and a lot of families also have New Year's get-togethers. So this is the time of the year where everybody puts on 7 or 8 pounds. And then, of course, New Year's resolution is, I'm going to lose some weight. But you hate to see food go to waste. Everybody does. Even if your belly tells you you're full, you're at somebody's house, and no matter whose house you go to, there's always more food than you need. So you think, man, I'm full, I'm stuffed, I'm done. And then somebody walks by with a whole big old dish and says, here, take this home with you. Then you take it home and you don't want it to go to waste, so you eat it. But in today's video, we're going to be talking about some college football. Any thoughts on any of the games from Saturday, please feel free to let me know. Any thoughts on what you think the new college football playoff poll will look like at 7 o'clock Eastern tomorrow night when it comes out? Please feel free to let me know. Me personally, my top 6, if I was a voter, is Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, TCU, USC, and Clemson. And the reason why I have Clemson at number 6 instead of LSU is, for one, the eye test. When I watch both teams, to me, Clemson's just better than LSU. But for 2, they've got one thing in common. Both teams played Florida State. Clemson beat Florida State and beat them pretty handily, whereas Florida State beat LSU. So if your one common denominator is Florida State, one team beat Florida State, the other team didn't beat Florida State, then I'll go with the team that beat Florida State. But me and a coworker of mine last Friday were discussing the playoff poll, and I told him the same thing I said here on the channel last week. Tennessee's not going to the playoffs because not only are they not going to win their conference, they're not even going to win their division. I said, now, of course, that's not going to matter if Tennessee loses again, or if Clemson loses again, or if USC loses again, because obviously somebody gets in if everybody loses again. But if everything remains the same right now, and the playoff committee has to choose between a one-loss Tennessee who won absolutely nothing, or a one-loss Clemson who won their conference, Clemson's getting that 4th playoff spot. He didn't want to hear it, but I was just giving him my honest opinion. 16 of the 19 one-loss teams who have won their conference have made the playoffs. And if Clemson wins their conference this year, it will not be any different. They will make the playoffs. But of course, that doesn't matter now because Tennessee lost Saturday. So now obviously they're out of the equation. If they had a chance of getting in, they don't now. But Georgia defeated Kentucky by the score of 16-6. The game was sloppy. Georgia's offense never really got into a true rhythm. I actually heard about the first 2.5 quarters of this game on the way to OSW Saturday because the game moved so fast. It was halftime before 5 o'clock. I couldn't tell you the last time an FBS game moved along so fast, but since it did move along so fast, I got to hear the first about 2.5 quarters, and the game was never in doubt. It was never in question, but I did think Georgia would at least have some kind of rhythm on offense. They never did, but most people thought Kentucky's offense would look so much better this year than it has in the past since everybody's so high on Will Levis, but their offense, honestly, it's worse this year in my opinion. Ohio State defeated Maryland by the score of 43-30. Michigan defeats Illinois 19-17. TCU defeats Baylor 29-28. And both of those games were at noon. And Michigan and TCU were both trailing in the fourth quarter. And I said, this is going to be a shake-up week in the poll because we've got Michigan losing and TCU losing. I thought one of them would lose, but they both came back and won. TCU actually kicked a field goal as time expired to win the game, 29-28. When you watch TCU play, they don't look like a top 5 team, but it's hard to not be a top 5 team when it's this late in the season and you're still undefeated. But it seems like it doesn't matter who they play and how good the team is and where the game is played at. TCU has to get behind every single game, and they have to come back and win every single game. And you would think eventually it's going to come back to haunt them. They're going to get behind against somebody, and they're not going to be able to come back and win. But so far, it's worked for them. Get behind, we'll come back late, we'll win. And they do it. And the game I mentioned earlier, Tennessee loses. Not only does Tennessee lose, they looked awful. They lost to South Carolina by the score of 63-38. Just goes to show that you never know in the world of college football. That was the most points ever given up by a ranked team to an unranked team. Whatever the Gamecocks wanted to do on offense, they could do. That was the most pitiful excuse for defense I've ever seen in my life. You could find 11 people on the side of the road that know nothing about football and play defense better than the Vols did Saturday night. South Carolina's been pedestrian at best all year long on offense. Spencer Rattler actually had more interceptions than touchdowns going into the game on the season, and he had 6 touchdown passes. So if Tennessee had any shot of going to the playoffs, that's definitely off the table. And it also ended the collegiate career of Hendon Hooker. He tore his ACL in the fourth quarter of the game. So I'm assuming that backup Joe Milton will be the quarterback this upcoming week against Vanderbilt. And Joe Milton's probably going to be quarterback 1 heading into next season. But I hope that Josh Heupel has plan B, because if Joe Milton's your quarterback, you're looking at a 7-5 team, maybe 8-4, because Joe Milton can throw the ball. So we can't sit here and say he can't throw, because he can. I've seen the man throw the ball 80 yards. But if you can't throw it where it's supposed to go, then having the strong arm does you no good. And I intentionally said Josh Heupel because his name is spelt like Heupel. I know it's not pronounced that way, but I like saying that. So Josh Heupel better find plan B, because Joe Milton is not their long-term answer next year. at quarterback. Another good game on Saturday. USC defeated UCLA by the score of 48-45. I listened to this game coming home Saturday night on national radio. Over 1,100 yards of offense in that game. In the second half, neither team could stop the other team, but with about 2 minutes to go, UCLA threw an interception, and that was the difference. USC hangs on to win 48-45. Clemson defeats Miami by the score of 40-10. 40 straight home wins now. For Clemson, they have not lost at home since November the 12th of 2016. So if they beat South Carolina this upcoming Saturday, all the seniors on the team are going to graduate and leave Clemson having never lost at home during their collegiate playing career. That has to feel nice. Not too many senior classes can say that. But if you watch the game, then you've seen my biggest issue with Mario Cristobal and why I say the man can't coach. There was a play in that game where a Clemson player had to be a good 5 yards out of bounds, and the Miami defender still tackled him and threw him to the ground. And of course, every single official on the field threw their flag because it was blatantly obvious it was a late hit. But instead of Mario Cristobal going to the player and doing his job as a coach and helping the player fix his mistake, he goes to the refs and fuss at them for throwing the flag. Like, where were the refs wrong at? It was blatantly a late hit. How are the refs wrong? But Mario Cristobal always wants to deflect blame onto everybody else except for where the actual problem is. I believe it was Tuesday of last week, word came down that there's going to be a lot of transfers as soon as the season ends for the Hurricanes because Mario Cristobal, behind closed doors, is blaming the players' family and parents for their issues. And you can't do that. You're the head coach. And any coach that actually can coach can tell you if there's issues, whatever the issues are, it always starts at the top. So if Mario Cristobal doesn't start accepting blame, nothing is going to change. Oregon defeats Utah by the score of 20-17. Now, it was a good game, but more than likely, most people didn't see it because it started so late Saturday night and went into early Sunday morning. But even though it was a good game, it was lower scoring than most folks thought because both offenses have been playing so good lately. You would think 2017 be the halftime score, but it was the final score. In a small upset, North Carolina goes down to Georgia Tech by the score of 21-17. The Tar Heels are actually up 17-0 and never scored again. So if by some chance Georgia Tech, which they will not, but if by some chance Georgia Tech can pull off the upset and defeat Georgia this upcoming weekend, they'll go 6-6 and go to a bowl game. And for Georgia Tech, that would feel really, really good, as bad as they've been the past few years. Another small upset, Ole Miss goes down to Arkansas 42-27. And it wasn't that close. It was actually 42-6 at one time, and Ole Miss scored some garbage touchdowns. And, of course, there's a rumor going around that Lane Kiffin is leaving and going to Auburn. So you put up a performance like that, people are going to say, well, he must be leaving because obviously he ain't coaching us anymore. We just got shellacked by Arkansas. Navy pulls off a small upset. They defeat Central Florida by the score of 17-14. Vanderbilt continues to overachieve. They defeat Florida by the score of 31-24. And Purdue, or Purdue, whatever you want to call them, they defeat Northwestern 17-9. Iowa defeats Minnesota 13-10. those two scores matter because both of those teams are still alive and have a chance to win their half of the Big Ten. Pittsburgh defeats Duke 28-26. Wake Forest gets back on the winning side by defeating Syracuse 45-35. And I already gave you my personal opinion on what the top six would be if I had a vote tomorrow night. Not saying that will be the top six, but I think it should be the top six. But of course, it's not going to matter after this weekend because Ohio State and Michigan play each other. One of them has to lose. I personally think the loser will be Michigan, but I might be wrong. I think Michigan depends way too much on Blake Corum, and they expect Blake Corum to have 300 yards rushing every game. And I think if you stop Blake Corum, I think Michigan is beatable. So I think the Buckeyes beat them. Again, any thoughts on it, please feel free to let me know. Let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. What did the horse say after it tripped? Help, I've fallen and I can't giddy up. And that wraps it up for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of three. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.